And we're going to move right on here, and I'm going to switch to English for this part, because we have a friendly face here from Finland. It's Tuomas Pippola, who's the CEO of Nuuka Solutions, right?
Yes.
And you're here to talk to us about sustainable cities?
Yes, that is correct.
All right. Well, the stage is yours.
Thank you. So, a brief introduction from my side. So, Tuomas Pippola. I have been focusing 20 years of bringing Nordic technologies to international markets and making them successful. And I'm bringing those learnings to table here. On top of that, I'm the CEO of Nuuka, which is intelligence behind healthy buildings. So I want to bring the learnings from that, from Nuuka, who have been connecting different customers, like for example, City of Helsinki and their 1,000 buildings, and what we have learned on the way. Because what we have learned is that we'll have a major impact for the sustainable cities in the future. So it will be a few remarks, observations from the road and what we have learned. So I guess, here we go. So first, what is important for everybody in the universe for sustainable cities is that actually we spend 90% of our time in buildings. We spend them in this case, in metro station. We spend them at home, and 90% of those buildings are actually old buildings. Thus, we are actually the health of people will be affected by all buildings we have there, and we are focusing on actually healthy buildings and the great indoor climate and those ones because that is crucial for great cities, sustainable cities in the future. Second, what we see is actually there is a $250 trillion industry, real estate. You see a picture, a familiar picture, I guess, where all the buildings in there are old buildings. And those are the buildings that will define if the cities are good to place to live in, if the cities are sustainable, if they save energy and all of that. And what we see is that real estate industry lacks in digitalization. It's behind in digitalization, and processes are inefficient if I compare them to other industries. So basically, we try to support in that. Then the third key observation is that 40% of the CO2 emissions in the world, so all the CO2 emissions, 40% come from buildings. And like third of the energy consumption comes from the building. So if we want to have sustainable cities, we need to save energy in the buildings. And as you see in the picture, some of those buildings may be old. And typically 80% of the building CO2 emissions, energy consumption, all of that comes from time of use, meaning old buildings, and not from construction period. So we really need to focus on old buildings, the full life cycle, and save the energy, because that way we could save 32%. So one third of the world's CO2 emissions could be saved if we were reducing all the emissions away from the old buildings. So practically what I am saying out of that is that all the buildings matter, not just the newest and the greatest, but all buildings, including this beautiful school from the 60s, concrete, brutal, betonistic building, beautiful architecture from the 60s, connected to Nuuka. All of those buildings matter, and we want to connect all of those buildings. So from our point of view, what we are set out to do is to make all the buildings healthy for the people, for the businesses, and for the environment. And that's what we try to do, and our learnings come from those. And if I take two slides, actually just clicking through what we really do of trying to make buildings, people, and the full environment healthy, is we connect buildings, new and old. It doesn't matter what it is, what the building is, and we focus on the physical system. So HVAC processes, energy meters, IoT sensors, all of the physical things in there, so that we get the data to cloud. So we collect the data, we refine the data, we validate the data, we do combination of the data, and we can of course share the data through the open APIs. Then the second what we do, we actually do analytics. So it's not enough to have the data, you need to do something about it. So we analyze the data, we give the tools to analyze the data, and we give tools to diagnose the data. So we can do real-time automatic diagnostics. For example, during guaranteed period of a building, our software can run and diagnose if everything is fine, if everything is working, and it can help construction companies to guarantee the processes work as it should. And then the third, we optimize the buildings, meaning we have machine learning, we have AI, and we can use in real time artificial intelligence, machine learning to operate buildings. Almost like in the Jetsons, we are actually kind of controlling the buildings, and we use latest and greatest technologies to do that, but we do that safely. And so basically we connect, analyze, and optimize. And now what we do is that we do it despite what the building is. School, kindergarten, great office building, mall, or whether it's an apartment house. We do it regardless who is the provider of the hardware. We do it regardless what's the software. We have done that 10 years, so we know it inside out, and we could talk details about that. But the point is, regardless what the building is, we can connect the physical systems to the cloud to make them to analyze and to be able to optimize that. So basically what we have done is we have connected already 3,000 buildings to the cloud, and we are analyzing and optimizing them. So now then, after kind of talking about the company, let me kind of go back to some of the observations I want to make. And these are less from the industry. And I actually took them more from my experience from the telco area, where I have seen ups and downs of the telco business in the Nordics. So if I start from the first one, what you measure is what you get. I remember the logistics crisis of Nokia in the 90s when it almost got lost, and ultimately thought that it would lose to Motorola and Ericsson, but it started to use data about logistics. It started to put to everybody's agenda the data. It is the information of moving boxes, not about the boxes, but about information, and they were ruthless about using the data. In a similar manner, with that, they were able to kind of grow. And in similar manner, in real estate industry, we need to use the data. We need to analyze the data. We need to have the same data to everybody. We need to motivate people to use the data. And unfortunately, I still hear too many customers saying, but we can't invest into people of analyzing the data. But what I'm saying is what you measure is what you get. And I have seen that in many industries, it's always the same. If you do that, you invest a bit of money to the data, you will get results. Trust me. The second example, in telco industry, I learned about exponential growth. In telco industry, it's the Moore's law. Because of that, we have smaller and smaller gadgets all the time. We have Metcalfe's law, which is making a utility of the service to be subject of how many people are connected, which makes practically, for example, Facebook to be absolute leader, the winner takes it all mentality. Or like my economics professor was saying, rule of 72. If you grow your economy 1% year on year for 72 years, you have doubled the economy. Meaning, if you increase something, if you increase your profits 1% month on month, you have doubled it in 72 months, it is in 6 years. If you continue the logic, if you improve something 6% month on month, you have doubled the results in a year. Now what I see, all the startups, King, Supercell, Spotify, Instagram, Facebook, others, to do growth hacking. They put dedicated teams, month on month improve things of getting users, keeping users, and monetizing users, and they get great results. Just look at the stock prices of Supercell, or how important King is, and things like that. So if we do the same in real estate industry, if we improved just 1% energy efficiency month on month, we would be actually, in that case, half the energy use, half the CO2 consumption in 6 years. And improving 1% per month is trivial. If we improve 6% month on month and invest in that, we reduce energy consumption, we reduce CO2 levels in a year. So we could in 1 year remove 1/6 of world CO2 emissions by just pure focus in these old buildings. Then the next observation. I have a beautiful church in there. I have seen a lot of companies trying to build churches with big companies, putting $100 million, 5-year project, trying to get something done. And I have a lot of examples where I've seen them failing. Meaning is that don't overshoot spending and don't overshoot doing big waterfall project or this kind of, Sagrada Familias, but actually take smaller steps. Pick existing pieces, use the clock cycles. It may take 10 years to change the BMS system, or you change it every 10 years. It may take 1 year to do a bigger renovation. It may take 3 months to take Nuuka in use. It could take 1 day to decide to put the presence sensor into the building and connect it into the cloud and start measuring something tomorrow. So you don't need to wait. So basically don't do these huge projects which will not lead anywhere. I'm not saying you shouldn't have a vision. You still need to have a vision and align the step there, but don't do those huge projects. Looking it from the other point of view, I'm kind of, basically saying pick a lot of Legos, this kind of old-fashioned Legos, not with the instructions and all of that, and, start building. And take the, we provide great green Legos, Netmore may provide, great red Legos, somebody else, some other Legos, and then you just secure that those things match together. And so that you can plug and play, that they have open APIs, like we do, for example, that you can actually get the data to other systems, that you can actually own the data so that you don't give your control away to anybody. So take the mentality of the trial and error. Take a 3-year-old kid who is, building the Legos without trying, and you don't exactly know what is coming. Have a vision, but, build it step by step. Now then, what I want to kind of, give you an example is that is partly what we have been seeing also to work in real life. In the picture, you see one of the buildings of Edge Technologies, which is a Dutch real estate developer company making the most sustainable buildings in the world, coolest buildings. This is Grand Central Berlin. So even if we support all the buildings, smallest kindergartens in Kuopio, Helsinki or Lappeenranta, we support also the greatest buildings with the LEED and BREEAM and whatnot certificates. And we are giving one Lego to them. There are other Legos, there are Mapic Legos there. There are many other Legos who are doing sensing where people are moving, reserving spaces, all of that. But it is an open API. They are using us for energy, for HVAC, for indoor air, and we can help them. And it is proven in the real life that the model I'm talking is working. In a similar manner, what we will do and what we are doing is aligning to the real estate core and Azure smart buildings, so that basically then regardless what is the big smart building platform you might be using, we are compatible to that. So you should always mandate forward compatibility, open APIs and others to be able to do that. So basically secure that when you are building things, the building blocks, the Legos are actually working together. Now then, the kind of my final remarks relates to 3 phenomenon. So the first on the left, I remember I was in charge of a P&L for E-series, Nokia communicators and whatnot in Asia when they launched that small phone on the left. It is the iPhone. And technically speaking, it wasn't the best. It didn't have 3G, it didn't have QWERTY, you just name it what didn't have, but everybody knew how to be able to use it. 3-year-old kid and my grandma were able to use it. And I tell you, they didn't know how to use Nokia or, Ericsson mobile phones. And it actually digitized and changed everything in that thing. So that's a story I have lived through. I have understood what happens, and I have seen that the kind of the value is not in the hardware players of this real estate industry, but on the layer, on the brains on top of that. The second picture is a car. And I just happened to see last week the CEO of Volkswagen said that they are not going to face the same problem that Nokia and other players faced with the iPhone. And I'm just scratching my head and wondering, is that really so? Like 2-3 years ago, who would have believed, like Musk and the Tesla and all of that would have done what they have done and what they may still to be doing for the CO2 and many other things. So it will have a humongous change into one industry. And now, if those are two things happened in the other industry, I start to see the signs of similar things happening in this industry, and I'm happy on that, and we can help on that. But now comes the third thing, this funny little virus, which is slightly magnified in that picture, so which will change everything on how we work, how we live, who will go to office, who will not. What's the value of the office assets? And I think you know that much more than I do, but it's a huge change. Now what I see, it's actually these three mega things happen in the real estate industry as we speak, which is kind of, it's basically saying us is that everybody, you should fast, pick anything there is, test it, try it, move forward, and not wait a second, and don't make big sketches, or if you make big sketches, execute the same time. So then thus my observations would be basically that, that first of all, invest to measure. Don't just digitize, but invest to measure, invest to analyze, invest to people who are doing something. The second, continuous improvement. If you look at the companies like Amazon, I have been in a startup that is actually pushing software one commit to the production all the time. So every time a line of software is written, it goes to production. That is the best continuous improvement. Go to that one because you get feedback, you can get, improvement that way. Exploit the different clock frequencies. You can put tomorrow sensors in the house. You can do things in 1 week. You don't need to wait for a new building to be coming in. Adopt the trial and error. All the Scrum methodologies, all the greatest, newest software, it is starting from that trial and error, from Scrum, from iterative development. And basically, the kind of to outline then the bottom line, which I maybe didn't explain so much, is that this is a cultural change. This is a behavioral change. This needs a leadership of kind of talking, acknowledging, engaging to make the change. Because operating like once was okay or was needed is not enough anymore. So basically embrace it as a major change exercise to digitize, to get results, and change the ways of working in this industry. Now then the final remarks, 2 remarks. I just want to note that, we love great connectivity. So as you see, there is a great connectivity from a different era. Edward was talking about great connectivity from the net more, so we love it. So if you use, for example, get the net more and connectivity in the house and you have the box, we can bring there in a box where our software is sitting. We don't like the boxes, we are not hardware company, we are software SaaS company, but we can have our software running in that building. So we love great connectivity. We have seen that the great connectivity isn't there in 90% of the cases, so we would love to work with more buildings with great connectivity. The second thing is that if we bring our box into any of your buildings, we always integrate in the LoRa sensor there. So you get it kind of for free, which is meaning is that you have internal LoRa network for free in your building. If you want to measure presence, you just go and buy LoRa sensor, stick it in, put the numbers into the portal, and voila, you are done. And that's the other thing what I want to say is that if you use latest technologies, it gives you a huge option value. And with those 2 things about loving great connectivity, loving the great technologies, I want to just, close this and kind of, remark about that we want to be the intelligence behind the healthy buildings. And if you want to make the businesses, people, and the buildings healthy, feel free to touch base with us or reach to us, and we can try to see if we can help you.
Hey, thanks, Tuomas. That was really interesting. We're going to go into a Q&A session, but I just also wanted to remind the audience that you can ask questions to Tuomas and to all our speakers today. And you need to go to the right-hand side of the Hopin platform, and you can see the stage chat there, which is where you put your questions and comments. And I'll try to read them as I go through here. But I wanted to start with the first question to you. Something that really is interesting to me is you're talking about applying growth hacking to the real estate industry. And that kind of touches upon something that previous speakers have talked about today too, that you have, in a sense, a different attitude in the real estate business, which is very different from in some other areas of tech, and you mentioned mobile phones, for example. So just applying that kind of thinking that you can improve the energy consumption in a building by 1% by trying to hack it every month, and then you will reach fantastic results after a while. But why is that not happening? Why is the real estate industry not thinking like other industries in that sense, maybe?
So I think the first one is that in many cases the data is not available and transparently available to everybody. Thus, people have partial view or they don't have a full view.
So it's a chicken and the egg
It's
question?
kind of a chicken and the egg. The second is I see that in the real estate industry, in many cases, especially in commercial real estate, companies are not investing in the people of doing that, but are using kind of a subcontractors for doing everything. So if you don't,
it's not core business.
It's not a core business. And then of course I'm not saying that all the real estate should be growth hacking. You know, it's not, and it doesn't need to be iterative. But what I'm seeing is that if you start it from the data, if you look at the data, if you kind of, work through that and you assign a small team, and then you go always like 80-20 rule, where are the biggest things, where are the smallest things, you are able to do that. But first, I think that it's actually bringing all the data together and having an access to everybody to that data, and then motivate and coach them to actually do it. It's actually the biggest. Probably that motivation and coaching is the biggest challenge.
Right. And where do you see that the biggest improvements could be made? You mentioned energy consumption, so that's an obvious area, I guess. That's an obvious area.
Well, the second one, of course, that will be following up on the CO2 emissions as well, so it will have a direct impact on sustainability. The third one is actually also the indoor air is also something and the kind of other indoor climate issues like heating, for example. There are, of course, a lot of improvements where some of the systems are measured and adapting to the CO2 levels, but that's one area which can be improved so that you have the well-calibrated sensors, you really measure and you follow up the sensors, you are actually changing the values, set points much faster than traditionally that you have a kind of, something done every month or every year or something. So that is another area. So you could be actually getting much better indoor climate in multiple ways if you hack that.
Interesting. And also, you're talking about the mobile industry and the mobile phone industry. And of course, we talked about 5G today too.
Yeah.
How do you see 5G being able to improve the real estate industry?
So I think one of the things is, for example, is the good connectivity in all the areas where you might have a Faraday cage or you might not kind of, be able to get the connectivity in a cellar and other places. It's possible.
Where you don't have a wired internet connection.
Correct.
Yes.
And then the second one is there may be cases. I think if I understood Edward correctly, it's not a silver bullet 5G in this area. I don't believe it's a silver bullet. The network slicing may be kind of a topic in some areas. Say if you want to be having a great connectivity in a mall or in a say Globen or a new arena in Tampere, Tammerfors, Finland, that you could have a slice for an event and things like that. So when you have a specific events and the network slicing, that would be one area I think it would be actually, or you have a great celebration of Sweden, winning something, and everybody is in the downtown, so you get a slice for them so they can watch videos. So in those cases, it would be great, but otherwise, I don't see that is like a silver bullet.
Okay. One question here from the stage chat. What is your business like? What does it look like in Sweden right now? You're a Finnish company, so in which markets are you?
So we are operating. We are operating in Finland and Sweden. So those are two key markets. And basically, we are also exporting to Netherlands, USA, and so on. And we are all the time growing in Sweden, and we have a couple of customers in here. So we are really committed here, and basically what we are doing is we want to be building great home business and extend the business in Finland and Sweden and take those learnings then kind of internationally. So it's like, and if we have, for example, partners locally in Sweden, Finland, it's better to go with the partners internationally, but because in the international waters, you need to have enough breadth. So, that's our internationalization strategy.
Right. Another comment from the stage chat too. So with 5G, you're able to more precisely perhaps locate people and the way that they move in the buildings and so on, and get more precise data. Is that correct, or?
That is possibly correct. To be kind of clear, we are not focusing on people movement or the kind of reservation spaces and all the others. To my understanding, it's correct in the 5G. I know there are other complementary technologies. I know Finnish companies, I know Dutch companies, others who are having technologies which relates to actually kind of indoor positioning. So you could also look at those technologies if you don't use 5G.
Because I'm thinking about your point about growth hacking too, because a lot of people are using those kind of positioning things now to see how people are moving around in stores and in office buildings and in malls and so on, and then being able to use that data to improve sales. And
yes, now that would be extremely interesting to actually do the analytics, do the analysis, and also see whether the 5G is better or whether, for example, kind of Wi-Fi based location methods would be better, and what kind of applications could be coming out of that. And I know that there are a couple of companies working on that area and trying to hack something, but let's see.
Yeah. And of course, something that's struck me with your presentation is how much energy is actually used, or how much of the CO2 emissions are actually coming from the real estate sector.
That was a shock to me.
Yes.
And it is actually something we are doing. And then on top of that, there is also the power aspect, that sometimes you are actually kind of needing a lot of power, or you need a specific point of time. Like in Finland, everybody goes to sauna on Saturday night.
Yes.
It could be a problem. So we need to be able to adjust that level and all of that. So
not just Saturday nights, but all the time, right?
yeah, all the time. But that's a huge number. And of course, it's a huge cost, and it's a huge impact on the CO2. So, I think, there is a huge opportunity on improving that.
Because when you think about sustainable cities too, people might think that, it's the fossil fuel cars and buses and trucks and stuff that are, causing the pollution. But actually, buildings play an important part there.
They really much play. And then on top of that, exactly, if everybody is heating the same time or cooling the same time and others, we might even need to be turning on gas turbines or other more polluting methods to be able to support the grid on that. Right. And we have some technologies in there too, but it's amazing.
Yeah. And we are about out of time here, but I have a last question too, and something that some previous speakers spoke to as well. What about artificial intelligence? And you seem to know a lot about technology and so on. How do you see that being applied to energy consumption and the data that you guys are extracting?
So it's actually something we are doing now. So we are running artificial intelligence in basically final commercialization stages in a few buildings in Finland. And it is used already now, and basically based on all the testing and all the others, you can get to the 20% savings and all of that. And it's just obvious if you start to every minute predict what is the situation of indoor climate, energy need, and all of that. If you do that every minute, all the time, you use all the data from the building. It is just obvious that when you end up having hundreds of thousands of megabytes per building coming in every day, software, statistical models are the best way of handling that.
Right.
And we are bringing the first ones. I know there are other good companies doing exactly the same. And there will be multitude of different ways of addressing it and trying it out. And we have a really novel way of doing it. And, if somebody is interested, we can tell you more, because it can start to be run now. And I am sure that will be just the start of it will be like 10 to 20 years of innovation on artificial intelligence on optimizing buildings.
Because it seems to me that real estate, the data that comes from real estate must be much more predictable than, say, human behavior data and so on. So, artificial intelligence should make sense in the real estate industry in that sense.
It does. And we have proven that it's actually kind of quite trivial as well. And we have used neural networks, for example, but you don't even need things like that. So it is really much today, not tomorrow, but it is today that can be applied, and there will be multiple application areas for that.
Yeah, we like stuff that can be applied today.
Yes.
Thank you, Tuomas, for joining us here at Smart Property 2020. And we have our next speaker already standing by.